How to make breakfast. Good morning! I'm so glad you're here. I've been cooking breakfast for my family, for guests, and honestly for myself almost every single day for years, and I still remember how intimidating it felt the very first time I tried to make more than just a bowl of cereal. So today, I'm going to walk you through the whole process. From the moment you wake up and think, I want a real breakfast, all the way to sitting down and enjoying it. We'll cover eggs, some sides, coffee or tea, and all the little things that trip people up along the way. Don't worry about getting it perfect. Just follow along with me, step by step, and by the end of this, you're going to feel a lot more confident standing in front of your stove. Getting your kitchen ready before you even turn on the stove. Before you crack a single egg, the very first thing I want you to do is stop and look at your kitchen. This is something beginners almost always skip, and it's the number one reason breakfast turns into a stressful, smoky mess. So take 2 minutes and pull out everything you think you'll need: eggs, butter or oil, bread, milk, a pan, a spatula, plates. Set them on the counter where you can reach them without turning your back on the stove. Why does this matter so much? Because eggs cook fast. We're talking 1 to 2 minutes for something like scrambled eggs. And if you're still hunting for the salt when your eggs are already in the pan, they'll overcook before you even notice. A common mistake beginners make here is starting to preheat the pan and then realizing they forgot to take the eggs out of the fridge, which throws off the whole rhythm of the meal. My tip: eggs actually cook more evenly if they're at room temperature rather than fridge cold. So if you have 5 extra minutes, set them on the counter while you gather everything else. While you're at it, this is also the moment to decide what you're actually making. Are you doing eggs and toast? Pancakes? Something heartier with bacon or sausage? For this guide, I'm going to walk you through a classic, well-rounded breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, and a simple side, because once you've got the fundamentals of that down, you can adapt to almost anything else. Starting with your coffee or tea. Here's something a lot of beginner cooks don't think about. Start your coffee or tea before you touch the eggs. Coffee makers and kettles take a few minutes to do their thing, and that's dead time you can use productively instead of standing around waiting. If you're using a drip coffee maker, fill the reservoir with fresh, cold water, not water that's been sitting in the machine for days, which can taste stale, and use about 2 tablespoons of ground coffee per 6 ounces of water as a general starting point. If you're making tea, fill your kettle and get it going now too. A warning here: don't walk away from a stovetop kettle for too long. It's an easy thing to forget once you get absorbed in cooking, and a kettle that boils dry can damage itself or, worse, start a small fire on some stovetops. Set a mental timer, or better yet, use your phone. Cracking and prepping your eggs. Now, let's get to the eggs, since they're really the heart of most breakfasts. Crack 2 eggs per person into a bowl, not directly into the pan. And I really mean this because cracking into a bowl first lets you catch any tiny bits of shell before they end up in your food, and it lets you check that the eggs look and smell normal before they're cooked. To crack an egg well, tap it firmly once on a flat surface like your counter rather than the edge of the bowl. Tapping on a flat surface creates a cleaner break and makes it much less likely you'll drive shell fragments into the egg. This is one of the most common beginner mistakes. Cracking on the bowl's edge tends to shatter the shell into little pieces that are hard to fish out. Once your eggs are in the bowl, add a small splash of milk, about a tablespoon per 2 eggs, and a pinch of salt. Then whisk them with a fork until the yolks and whites are completely blended and the mixture looks pale yellow and slightly foamy. Why the milk? It makes the eggs a touch creamier and helps them stay soft when they cook. Why the salt now rather than later? Salting early actually helps break down the egg's proteins a little, which gives you a more tender, less rubbery result. This is a small trick, but it makes a real difference, and it's the kind of thing that took me a while to learn on my own. Cooking the eggs. Now here's where a lot of people go wrong, so listen closely. Put your pan on the stove over medium-low heat, not high heat. This is probably the single biggest mistake beginners make with eggs. They crank the heat up, thinking it'll cook faster, and instead, they end up with eggs that are browned and rubbery on the outside and undercooked or unevenly cooked in the middle. Eggs are a delicate protein, and they genuinely do best with patience and gentle heat. Add a small pat of butter, about a teaspoon, to the pan and let it melt completely, swirling the pan slightly so it coats the surface. You'll know the pan's ready when the butter has stopped foaming but hasn't started to brown. Pour in your egg mixture. Here's a technical term worth knowing. As the eggs begin to set around the edges, you'll gently push them toward the center with a spatula, letting the still liquid egg flow into the space you've cleared. This is called folding. Keep doing this slowly, every 20 seconds or so, rather than stirring constantly. Constant stirring actually breaks the eggs into small, dry crumbs, whereas folding gently gives you those soft, pillowy curds that make restaurant-style scrambled eggs so good. The eggs are almost done when they're mostly set, but still look a little wet and glossy on top. This is the moment to take the pan off the heat completely, even though it looks slightly underdone, because the residual heat in the pan will continue cooking the eggs for another 30 seconds or so as you plate them. If you wait until they look perfectly done in the pan, by the time you serve them, they'll be overcooked and dry. This is honestly the single most important tip I can give you about eggs. Making toast the right way. While your eggs are cooking or right before, depending on your timing, get your bread into the toaster. A common beginner mistake is starting the toast too late and then rushing the eggs to keep them from getting cold, which brings us right back to that overcooking problem. If your toaster has heat settings, medium is usually a safe starting point. You can always toast a second round darker if you like it crispier, but you can't unburn toast. Once it pops, don't let it just sit there getting cold and slightly soggy from steam butter it right away while it's still warm, since the butter will melt in slightly, which most people find far better than butter sitting on top of cold toast. Putting together a simple side. A full breakfast usually benefits from one more element, something with a bit of texture or freshness to balance the soft eggs and the toast. This could be as simple as sliced fresh fruit, like banana or berries, which need zero cooking and add natural sweetness. If you want something warm, sautéed vegetables like spinach or tomatoes work beautifully and can even go in the same pan you used for the eggs right before you cook the eggs, so you're not creating extra dishes. If you're including something like bacon or sausage, that should actually go on the stove first, before the eggs, both because it takes longer to cook and because you can use a small amount of the fat it releases to cook your eggs in afterward, which adds wonderful flavor. Just remember to drain excess grease onto a paper towel so your plate doesn't end up sitting in a pool of oil. Plating and serving. Once everything is ready, take a moment with how you plate the food. It genuinely changes how much you enjoy the meal. Warm your plates for a minute in a low oven, or by rinsing them briefly under hot water and drying them. Place the eggs first. Then lean the toast against them, rather than laying everything flat and separate, and add your side in its own little space on the plate. A small sprinkle of fresh herbs like chives or parsley, if you have them, or just a light dusting of black pepper on top of the eggs, makes the whole plate look intentional rather than thrown together, and it costs you nothing extra in effort. Summary. Let's walk back through everything we covered. You start by getting your kitchen organized before you turn on any heat, pulling out all your ingredients and tools so you're not scrambling mid-cook, and setting your coffee or tea going early since it takes time on its own. You crack your eggs into a bowl rather than the pan, tapping them on a flat surface to avoid shell fragments, then whisk in a little milk and salt to make them tender. You cook the eggs low and slow, folding gently rather than stirring hard, and you pull them off the heat just before they look fully done, because they'll keep cooking from residual warmth. Do these things consistently, and you'll find that making a real, satisfying breakfast stops feeling like a project and starts feeling like second nature. Enjoy your meal.